Okay, we'll get started. So, I want to thank the Union Point voters for coming out tonight. This is a great crowd, great to see everybody. My name is Tom Henderson, I'm the moderator of tonight's gathering. I'm a member of the Southfield Redevelopment Authority Board of Directors. I'm a full-time firefighter in Rockland, and I'm a lifelong resident of Rockland. Before we get started, just to identify our two exits on the left and the right, and then the bathrooms are on the right-hand side. Okay, that's a firefighter in me, I apologize, okay? As we get started, first I'd like to thank Dave Rubin. He's unable to attend tonight, but he's a member of the Southfield Redevelopment Authority. But his work to get everybody together in Union Point is just great. His passion for this is to make sure there's a transparent and informed platform for the Union Point residents, and he's worked very hard to get upvoters.org up and running, so there's real-time information coming out to the residents of Union Point. In particular, he wanted me to thank tonight Heidi Anderson, who's in the crowd tonight, and Brittany Bessler, who's in the crowd. They're from the Neighborhood Association. They've been pivotal in getting this organized tonight, and they've been pivotal in getting the UP voters up and running and working. So Dave also told me that 18 volunteers work from Faring Way alone, and he said they're turning Faring Way into a voting machine, quote unquote. So good job. I also want to recognize Lindsay Cruiser. She's here in the front with us tonight. She's the chairperson of the board of directors for the SRA. She's been instrumental in this project. I've had the opportunity to work for her for the last 2.5 years. Her motivation in driving this project is like no other. She's worked with local, state, and federal officials to make sure she brings the best product to the residents of Union Point and to the 3 surrounding communities. Thank you, Lindsay, for all your work. Tonight we have representatives for question 1, the ballot question, and then after that we're going to get to the candidates for state senate for this district, which will be Senator Patrick O'Connor and Dr. Katie McBrine. Unfortunately, Mr. Stephen Gill, the independent, was unable to attend due to a family emergency, so we will not see him, but he passes along his appreciation, and we wish him the best of luck. So tonight, we're just going to start with a few rules in the format before we get going. First, we're going to have ballot question 1 representatives. They're going to have 3 minutes each. Hi, how are you? There's a seat right over there. How are you?
Yeah, we do too.
Okay. So there's the ballot speakers for question 1. They'll have 3 minutes apiece. Then after that, there's not going to be any questions from the crowd or the audience on that. And then we're going to have the candidates. They're going to do their opening statement. It's going to be for 1 minute. And then we have a list of questions that we will go through that have been developed by the upvoters.org group. The candidates have not gotten these questions, so we'll take it from there. They'll have a minute to respond to each one. If we have time, we'll take questions from the audience. We do realize that there's a Red Sox game tonight. The Red Sox are going to win another game tonight, so if we could, please hold any applause for the candidates or any of the topics tonight till the very end. We'll make sure that if we run out of time, that the candidates and the representatives for both sides of the question will be here to talk to you individually if you have other questions. Just one thing, we want to make things professional tonight for the candidates and for the questions. If things start to go off track a bit, I'll be sure to get it back on track, and we'll move to the next question. And we have a great opportunity to hear the issues tonight from our candidates. It's important that we get our vote out there. The candidates are working hard. I appreciate all their hard work they have done, taking time and energy from their family to bring the issues out. We have the opportunity to chart the next 2 years in Massachusetts, but it's really a lot more than that. It's the future of Massachusetts. And I thank both candidates and the people working on question 1 for all their hard work. So without any more from me, we'll move right to the question. We didn't have an opportunity to flip a coin and decide who's going to go first. It's totally up to you, but if we could get a representative on question 1 to come up and speak, and we'll go from there.
Do you want to go? Go ahead. Okay.
So this is a representative social health system, and this is for the no on 1. Thank you.
Oh, excellent. I like that.
Hi, everyone.
everyone. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Suzanne Craig-Tessier, and I work at South Shore Health System. I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Noreen and Sandy, who are registered nurses at the hospital. We're really glad to have the opportunity to talk to you of what is a complex healthcare issue, one that affects us all in this room. This is a healthcare issue, no doubt about it. It's something that you, as you go to receive healthcare for not just the next 2 years, but for the future, it will impact you. It will impact you, your loved ones, and your family. And how we'll do that is a couple things. I'm a mom of 2 small kids, and my biggest concern as I started looking into this ballot question was about access at our hospital. We're going to have to recruit up to 250 nurses in order to comply with the ratios as written into the law. And that will be written into law, a law that we're going to have to follow with no exceptions at all times of the day. At an expense to our health system at up to $33 million. That's an expense that simply we just can't absorb as a small community health system like South Shore is. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make some really tough choices, ones that we don't want to make. We're super proud each and every day of the work that we do at South Shore to give you the care that you deserve, high quality services right in your backyard, to avoid having to go into Boston and travel far distances. But we're really worried that that won't continue if we have to make tough choices in order to live within the budget that we have. And it is a budget of which our last reported information in the state, we were at a 0.3% operating margin of less than $2 million. This is very real for us. It's something that we're battling each and every day. So I want you to have an opportunity to hear from the ones that are at the bedside each and every day, but it's something that as a mom, as someone who cares about healthcare in Massachusetts, I'm concerned that the services just won't be there for me, my kids, or we'll be waiting really, really long time for those services that we have really great access to today. So thank you again. I'm going to ask Noreen to just talk about it from her perspective.
Hello, I'm Noreen McBrine, and I'm Susan here from Weymouth. I've been here for over 30 years. I've worked at the hospital. Sorry, not a professional speaker. So again, my name is Noreen McLean, and I live here in the community, have for 30 years. I've worked at South Shore Hospital for 27. My daughter and son were born there. All of my family members have gotten care there, the code strokes, code AMIs, trauma patients, simple stitches. I worked in the emergency department for 15 years. And I just can't support this bill given the way that it's currently written. It's not a bill that's going to improve care, it's going to cost us, and it's really going to challenge the healthcare system to respond to the community needs. So that's why I'm not supporting the bill. I know and thank all of you for appreciating nurses and trusting us for the last 16 years. You trust us. We are the best profession. You give us 98% approval rating just being a nurse, and I appreciate that. And I just want to be honest with you that I just don't think this is a well-written bill that will support care the way we need to support care. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Donna Dudick. I live here in Weymouth. I am an RN and have been for 46 years. I did work in Boston, teaching hospital. I am now retired. What a yes vote does is it puts a limit on the amount of patients that a nurse can take care of at any one time. And people will say, well, why is that important? It's important because for every patient above 4 on a medical surgical floor, your chance of death is 7%. So if that nurse has 8 patients on a floor, you have a 30% chance of death. And I don't want to make any aspersions, but we're all getting older here, and who has most health care is the older population. So it does greatly affect you.
Good evening. I'm Susan Wright Thomas. I'm a registered nurse. I grew up in Abington. I currently live in Hull, and I've been working in Cambridge for 25 years as a registered nurse. I am on the board of directors of the Massachusetts Nurses Association, and I've been participating actively in opportunities to build nurse staffing for the entire 25 years of my career. I am on the committee that actually developed this bill, and I can tell you lots of reasons why it is written the way it is. passed laws twice in the House of Representatives with staffing legislation in them, with staffing limits, and we were not able to get them through the Senate. And so several years ago, we did put together a ballot resolution. We were asked by the Senate President to compromise, and that was where the ICU staffing law was made. Okay, so that was 1-to-1, one nurse to one patient in ICUs in Massachusetts. And our deal was that we're coming back for staffing in other units of the hospital next. Because if you should be safe in an ICU, you should be safe anywhere in your hospital, including maternity where I work. Okay, so, anyway, like all good bills, it went to committee to die. And so our solution then was to avail ourselves of one of the great democratic traditions, which is the ballot initiative petition. We gathered our signatures, we've got that out there on the ballot for the people to decide, not the government, the people of Massachusetts. These limits were developed by the professional nursing organizations that govern each specialty. So these were limits that were developed by nurses for patients, okay? They're not strict government mandated ratios. They are limits for patients by nurses.
Thank you for both sides of that question and bringing the information to us. So next we're going to start with the questions for the candidates. We're going to alternate to each candidate the questions. So I'm going to start with Dr. McBrine. I'm going to start right off with what's your position on ballot question 1? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, I apologize. I apologize. Opening statements for the candidates. I'm a little out of line. I'm seeing the Dodgers lose tonight.
We got it.
So we can start with opening statements. Thank you.
So I haven't been able to do it in a minute yet, but we'll see if we can speed opening statement. So my name is Katie McBrine, and I'm the Democrat running for State Senate in Plymouth and Norfolk. I'm a pediatrician, I'm a wife, and I'm a mom of 2 kids. I love being a pediatrician. Being a pediatrician is really fun. Not only get to hang around kids all day, but I love science. So I get to use science, I get to talk with families, I listen to families, and then I get to help solve problems, using science. So it really was a natural field for me to gravitate towards. But I've been seeing too many problems that is happening in the world and in our state. And healthcare is a mess. And I don't think as a pediatrician we can sit on the sidelines anymore and keep watching what is happening to my families and to what is happening to you. And so I've decided to step up and run because we don't have any physicians in our state house, and I think it's about time that we do. Not only do I see healthcare from the outside by helping my patients all the time, but my son has hearing loss, so I see the struggles that families go through on a daily basis, both with education and through the healthcare system.
Excellent. Senator O'Connor.
Thank you, the Union Point Neighborhood Association for hosting this today. My name is Patrick O'Connor. For the past 2.5 years, I've had the honor and privilege of representing you in the Massachusetts State Senate as your state senator. Before that, I spent 12 years as a counselor at large right here in Weymouth, my hometown, working on the enabling legislation, the development, as well as the zoning for this specific project. On the state level, over the past 2.5 years, we've seen an incredible growth. From growing our economy from a $800 million deficit to a $1 billion surplus, creating 110,000 new jobs in Massachusetts, investing in our children, our veterans, our seniors, our middle class, our infrastructure, and that's at the state level. On the local level, we've seen record level of aid for our schools, police, fire, public works, and infrastructure projects such as the Route 3 bridge repair project, seawalls, beach nourishment, and the Forward Bridge have been completed or ongoing. And we've secured funds for a new school, senior centers, adult disabled housing, libraries, veterans, water infrastructure, and so much more. I want to continue to do this work on your behalf up in the State Senate. I ask for your vote.
Thank you to both of you. So we'll start right off with the questions. Senator O'Connor, what is your position on ballot question 1?
I'm in favor of ballot question 1. My mother is a neonatal intensive care nurse up at St. Elizabeth's Hospital. Before that, she was at St. Margaret's. And she has seen the implementation of the 2014 ballot question firsthand, where she has a 2-to-1 patient ratio. Before that, she was potentially thinking of retiring because of some of the constraints that staffing had placed on her job, and that she'd seen over the different challenges that now nurses face with the opioid epidemic. I understand both sides of this question, and I think that there's an opportunity for the implementation process of this to address some of the concerns on the no side. I've sat down with both sides of the group, and I've even spoken with some folks on the no side who said that, even though they are against it, that there's still problems inside of our staffing ratios inside our hospitals, so we need to do something. And I think that this ballot question is the first step in fixing what I believe to be a major problem inside of our healthcare system, and that's staffing ratios.
Thank you, Senator. Dr. McBrine?
So I'm a yes on this ballot question. First and foremost, I believe in safety, and that is what I will always fight for, and that is what I will always believe in. And so for me, that's what this question boils down to, is do you want to be safer? And the answer is yes. We want people to be safer in the hospitals. It's unfortunate, though, that it had to go to a ballot question. I think this is a problem with our legislature, is that they're not listening to the people. They're not listening to our nurses who've been asking this and requesting this for a very long time. And so now it's forced to a ballot question. And unfortunately, so many things in healthcare are complex, because healthcare is complex. And so there are ways that we need to look at this, depending on which side it goes, but I think this is why this would be really helpful to have a physician in our state house, because I work in this environment. I know that how complicated this is, and I can help facilitate this question in whichever way it falls. If people decide yes, great, they're safe, but we need to worry about cost, and if they say no, then we still need to make people safer.
Thank you. The next question. One of the major obstacles to the development at Union Point has been a permanent water and sewer solution. Currently, the towns in the state expected to develop will show the substantially all responsibility for the water and sewer. That hasn't happened. Is it realistic to expect that a private entity bear all those infrastructure costs? And if so, why do you think that hasn't occurred over the last 15 years? Dr. McBride.
So obviously having water and waste removal at any location, but especially a large location, is very important. How can we expect this place to grow and have commercial and stuff if you don't have any ability to get water there and waste, right, removed? So I think this is a big question, and one that needs to be solved. And I have been researching a ton of stuff that we can research. A lot of this information isn't very transparent or readily available to find a good solution. But what I would say is, I deal with insurance companies, and that is a bureaucracy like you wouldn't believe. And I can somehow manage to get my patients care. And so I would like to use those skills to talk with all the entities that are involved with this, so that we can figure out a solution. There has to be some solution. Maybe we need to be really innovative about it, but I would go to everybody who's involved with this and try to figure out where's the information, what is lacking, and how can we get it there.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah, I believe that at the end of the day, the state's going to have to be a partner in the construction of the water and wastewater here at Union Point. I was proud to be able to secure a $3 million earmark in the Economic Development Bond Bill to start that process of the state actually being a partner, having that passed in the Massachusetts Senate, signed by the governor. This is the things that we need to do, is create real solutions to the problems that we have up here in Union Point to unlock the potential. Working on this project for 12 years and seeing 3 developers in front of the Weymouth Town Council promise us water and promise us wastewater, and just the continued rhetoric that we hear, we need action, and that's why at the state level we need to take it as soon as possible. And with the current structure, with the current developer that we have right now, we need to, especially at this point in time, get the state involved, because the housing market continues to climb, and we continue to see a less than acceptable amount of development up here, given the current economic climate that we have.
Thank you. HealthStar's troubles have been well documented. We hope and expect them to put their house back in order very soon. In the worst case, they have tens of millions of dollars of liability that fall to Union Point residents. and a multitude of other issues that would need to be addressed. What options are available to the state, and what do you think should be done by the state? Senator O'Connor.
I think that what the mayor did by giving L-Star an ultimatum was exactly the correct course of action. Right now, they are going through a management change, which I think is acceptable, and we need to continue to see what L-Star is going to produce. Having conversations with L-Star as well as other private interest groups that are looking at this project to potentially invest in, I know that some progress has definitely been made since that ultimatum has been put into effect, and I have a lot of hope and faith in this project. At the end of the day, we're 15 miles south of Boston on a commuter rail with all of this land ready to be developed, zoning in place. This is a gold mine, in my opinion, and it should be treated as such. And if it's not treated as such, then government has to get involved and say to these developers that they have to start doing this, because for too long this project has been abused by the developers, while politicians and government officials and residents here, which I myself am one, continue to feel the brunt of trying to get something concrete done here.
Thank you. Dr. McBrine. Absolutely. So L-Star's troubles have been well documented. We hope them to expect to put their house back in order very soon. In the worst case, there are tens of millions of dollars of liability that fall to Union Point residents, and a multitude of other issues that would need to be addressed. What options are available to the state, and what do you think should be done by the state?
So again, first and foremost, what I would like to do is sit down with L-Star, and there's also the Southfield Redevelopment Authority, and kind of discuss, what's been going on, what actions are taken, and what's the big stumbling blocks. I think the state can incentivize businesses to come in. I think that they have tried to do that with one of the tech companies by having them give land and tax incentives and things like that. It unfortunately doesn't seem like they've signed the dotted line on it yet, but I think we need to look into why that isn't working, why we can't get those to show up. And I think it involves a lot of conversations, but from a state standpoint, there are ways that we can incentivize this so that this place can grow, because it should. Right? I mean, there's enough people here, it's a great opportunity, and we just need to figure out what's the stumbling blocks.
Thank you. Again, in the circumstances of an L-Star default, some would push for a reversion to local control. Outstanding debt would need to be negotiated, but each town would be responsible for planning, zoning, and all other functions on each of the town's land. Would you be in favor of such an arrangement, Dr. McBride?
I think it would be helpful to have some input from the state when you have 3 different towns. I do think that each town kind of knows kind of what's best, and I do think local input is really super important. But when you have a big project that involves something around 3 towns, I think it's also helpful to have state, who deals with bigger projects, to have some knowledge and input in what's going on. So I'd like to see a collaboration between all 3 towns with the state involved to see if we can get the solution worked out.
Senator O'Connor.
Thank you. When I was on the Weymouth Town Council and we worked on putting together the plan in place for the zoning, that involved many conversations and relationships that we started with Rockland and Abington. I would not like to see them go by the wayside. I was glad that when we did this, we were able to take control of local zoning, that we were able to uniform all of the zoning with all of the communities together, as well as provide all of the services at the town level and for the town to get reimbursed, rather than the structure that was in place where Tri-Town Development Corporation was just basically writing a blank check and taking funds for resources. So as far as the question, I would hope that we never get to that point. I truly believe that L-Star is going to make it out of this struggle that they're currently in. I think that a lot of it was internal. I think that those internal struggles have been well documented and they're trying their best to reverse them. But should this ever go to a circumstance that any of this debt is passed down, I would do as much as I possibly could to make sure that none of that was absorbed by any resident here or any community that make up these 3 towns, this redevelopment authority.
Thank you. Rush hour rides on the commuter rail from South Weymouth are often standing room only. What can this state do about MBTA capacity? If additional funding is needed, where should that come from? Additional revenue or cuts from other parts of the budget? Senator O'Connor.
This is something that my office has been working on, seeing what I see every single day, whether I use the commuter rail or whether I drive out of the developments. I know that we need to do more as far as adding more cars to our Old Colony line. We've been very vocal on this specific matter, calling in Keolis, as well as calling the MBTA commuter rail leadership over at the MBTA. They've assured us that they will continue to monitor the situation, and as we continue to grow here at Union Point, that we will get those extra trains. There have been some instances where they have been able to put additional train cars on, as well as for the Greenbush line. And as far as where the money for transportation goes, we have $8.4 billion being invested in the next 4 years over transportation in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Next year, we're going to have all new Orange Line cars. The year after that, we're going to have all new Red Line cars. And while this is going on, the Green Line is going to be expanded into Somerville. There's been a major investment into transportation here in Massachusetts. And as far as where I'm concerned, we can bond and cover that amount of money. And this year alone, in the few months that have made up this fiscal year, we're $300 million in the plus. Massachusetts is in the positive. We're moving forward, and we can take that money and invest.
Thank you. Dr. McBrine.
So yeah, the MBTA is a mess. I mean, it's constantly breaking down. Just a couple of weeks ago, my husband was on the train for 2 hours for no reason. I think it was snow. I'm not 100% sure. But, you know, it's a problem, and it's a big issue that I keep addressing, is that we need to invest in it, right? And that has been the problem for a while. Like, we're starting to now, but it's been breaking down for a really long time, and we haven't invested in it. And we need to invest more. It's a machine, and things break on it, and you have to do maintenance on it. So one of the ways that I would like to revisit, there was trying to get the fair share amendment, which was a ballot question, but then became not a ballot question. Basically, it was a tax on people who make more than $1 million per year, that they would add a 4% tax on everything above $1 million. And I think that, that's fair, and that money would be used to further invest in our transportation system, which is in desperate need of it.
Thank you. Every candidate talks about reaching across the aisle. So Dr. McBrine, a Democrat, and Senator O'Connor, a Republican. Give us an example of an issue where you differ from your natural progressive or conservative constituencies and would stand with the other side simply because it's the right thing to do. Dr. McBrine.
Sorry, so give an issue in which I would...
Give an example of an issue where you differ from your natural progressive and conservative constituencies and would stand with the other side simply because it's the right thing to do.
That's a great question that I haven't been asked yet before, and so I'm trying to think of something. I will say that as a pediatrician, it doesn't matter who you are to me. I will take care of you, your kids, regardless. So whether you're I just take care of human beings. So going into politics, we have to pick a side because that's how our political system is set up, but I think it's more about your morals and what you believe and what you want to go for than necessarily anything else. Now, I believe in the Democratic platform. I voted on the Democratic platform, so I stand with it. I'll be completely honest with you that I don't necessarily, I haven't read the Republican platform, so I don't know necessarily an issue that I would differ on and stand against, but I would say that I just would talk with people about the beliefs.
Thank you. Senator O'Connor.
Thank you. I get this question quite often. I supported a bill that I was the only Republican on to make sure that there was never a registry in place, an immigration registry. I opposed the repeal of the Affordable Care Act that President Trump tried to put in place because it was going to negatively impact Massachusetts. I was the only Republican to support putting the Fair Share Amendment on the ballot. I disagreed with the separation of immigration, separation of children at the border. I opposed segments of the Trump tax cut that would negatively impact Massachusetts, specifically speaking, the writing off of taxes, both income taxes and property taxes. And I was proud to be named by Beacon Hill Roll Call as one of the most independent senators on Beacon Hill. I strongly believe in bipartisan. I believe that we need to, especially now in this national political climate that we're in, put party politics aside, start focusing on people, and get the job done in government, because far too often we let these issues pile up and let partisan bickering get in the way of actual results.
Thank you. For Senator O'Connor, going forward, what efforts do you see yourself making on behalf of Union Point if re-elected? And in the case of Dr. McBrine, what efforts on behalf of Union Point do you envision making that are different from those of Senator O'Connor? We'll start with Senator O'Connor.
Sure, every single day I think about what I can do to continue to move this project forward, just as I have for the past 12 years. This is something that I take extremely seriously, to the point in time that I moved in here 3.5 months ago. I think that this is the missing piece of the puzzle for the entire South Shore, and especially Weymouth. When you look at Weymouth, Weymouth is a cash-strapped community that doesn't have a commercial tax base. It doesn't have a downtown. This is the downtown. This is that cash base. What we need to do is continue to advance everything every avenue we possibly can go down. There was a life sciences bill that recently went through the legislature. We weren't able to get it passed, but I put in an amendment to get $1.5 million to create a structure of a incubator for life sciences companies right here at Union Point. Every single time a bill comes up that I have a vision on, whether it's being able to talk to Lindsay or talk to a member of L-Star or talk to a resident here and try to get something done, or if it's just on my own, every single day I go to work trying to think of how I can move this development forward.
Thank you. Dr. McBrine.
I would like to start with talking with all the entities to figure out why it's been stalled. You know, where are all the problems and how can we fix it? Because we have people here and we have no commercial. We don't have water. I mean, these are some big issues that need to be helped, and I think the state can help. And I would like to just put all my, put a bunch of effort behind it to help. I mean, I got a lot of energy, and I'm ready to take that energy and put it towards this because I think it really matters, because people matter to me and solving problems matters to me, and I think there are solutions to be had. We just need to, one, talk about it, and two, get all the experts involved to figure it out. And that's what I do on a regular basis, and so that's what I would like to do for you guys.
Thank you. Ballot question 3 addresses a current law which adds gender identity to the list of prohibited grounds for discrimination in public places of public accommodation, resort, and amusement. A yes vote would keep the current laws which prohibit discrimination on the basis of gender identity. A no vote would repeal this provision of the public accommodation law. Where do you stand on question 3, Dr. McBrine?
I am a very firm yes on it. All people deserve rights and to be treated as such. And I do not believe that there should be any law that impinges on who you are as a person. I take care of a lot of LGBTQ kids and trans kids, and I do not want anything that treats them differently than anybody else. They're kids, and we're all people. And so I'm a very firm yes on it.
Thank you. Senator O'Connor.
I'm a yes on question 3 as well. I believe it's a civil rights question, and I believe that we should do nothing and put nothing on the ballot that impacts any individual's civil rights. And I think if our other opponent was here, as we've been asked this question quite a bit, he'd said something that's kind of very real, where it's what's more natural than being able to use the public accommodation that you believe is fitting and appropriate for you. And I think that's something that really narrows it down to what this question is all about, and it's about civil rights.
Thank you. As you may be aware, there's a substance abuse rehab center here in Union Point. What are your views on the ongoing opioid crisis? Are we doing enough to combat this serious problem? Senator O'Connor.
Thank you. I'm very proud of the work that we've been able to do right here in Weymouth. Weymouth was one of the hardest hit communities with the opioid crisis. I'm 34 years old, and one of the reasons why I came back and ran at 21 years old to represent Weymouth was because of how many friends that I had and people that I went to school with that at that point in time got addicted to prescription drugs. It had not yet regressed to heroin and fentanyl that we see today, but it was prescription drug abuse. And over the 12 years that I worked in the Weymouth Town Council, we created a mental health and substance abuse committee. And this committee charged a lot of the community groups in town to work together, to communicate with each other, and to get as much results as we possibly could with this crisis. And the Patriot Ledger reported that Weymouth from September 17 to September 18 is down 90% in overdose deaths and down 42% in actual overdoses. This is results in action because we've taken a compassionate but aggressive approach to this crisis. And that's exactly what we need to do. And at a state level, Governor Baker has put in place landmark legislation that has made Massachusetts the national leader in how to address this crisis, and I couldn't be prouder to continue to work with him on this national epidemic.
Dr. McBrine.
I don't think we're doing enough because addiction is a really hard problem to solve. I don't think there's probably anybody in this room who hasn't been touched by addiction. It not only affects the person who is suffering from it, but it affects their family, it affects communities, and so we're seeing it all around. And not only professionally do I help families who are suffering with addiction, but personally, my sister has been a drug addict since she's been a teenager, and I can't tell you the number of times that I have driven around trying to find her or taking her to the hospital. So I know how difficult this can be, and I also know how difficult it can be to solve it, and we're just not doing enough things all at once to solve it, because there are multiple ways that people have addiction, right? There's people that you can treat and they get better, and so increasing the amount of education and increasing the amount of providers who can provide medical management is definitely what's needed. But we also need to treat them humanely. There's a lot of people with addiction that we can improve their quality of life, and there's many things that we can do on that. I can't answer it in a minute, but if you want to talk more, I can.
Thank you. We're all affected by the horrible murder of Weymouth Police Sergeant Michael Chestnut and Vera Adams. The accused in that case, Manny Lopes, a repeat offender, has been charged with selling cocaine, resisting arrest, and was on pretrial probation at the time of the shooting. What are your thoughts on this? Should Lopes have been incarcerated? Dr. McBrine.
If you commit crimes, then yes, I believe you should be incarcerated. When it comes to addiction, I don't think the prison system is a really good place for addiction, but I do believe that if you commit crimes, then yes, you should be in trouble for them. I mean, that's the way that sets up. I think what happened to both the officer and Vera Adams is a complete tragedy, and we need to look at our criminal justice system with a hard look and really start looking at how we can help reform that system, because that system is in dire need of reform. And so there are people that are slipping through the cracks, and we need to help fix it. And I will do what I can as a state senator, but we also need to elect some really good people in those offices to make sure that we get the reform we needed.
Thank you, Senator.
No, to put it very directly, I don't think that Manny Lopes should have been out on pretrial probation, and additionally, after he was out on pretrial probation, he got in trouble yet again. I think that what we need to do is we need to, in a lot of the aspects in what we have, is stop treating some criminals like victims. And unfortunately, we see that time and time again in our news, whether it be through the murder of Sergeant Chestnut or be the murder of Sergeant Gannon. You see people who have committed crime after crime after crime, which basically it's a game of catch and release for our law enforcement. That they catch them, they go to the judicial system lets them go or puts them on pretrial probation, they go back in society, they commit another crime. We need to start looking at this as what it is and continue to work to make sure that we don't have violent criminals on our streets. And it's tragic situations like this don't happen. And I've been proud to be able to talk with and work with the Chestnut family on hopefully putting something together, some concrete stuff together. And one thing that we were able to do this past legislative cycle, which I'm very proud of, is we finally put minimum mandatory sentencing on assault and battery on a police officer, which was not in law in Massachusetts, but we passed it this year, and I was very proud of that vote.
Thank you. We'll let the candidates do a closing statement, and then we'll move to questions from the audience. We've got a little bit of time. We'll start with Senator O'Connor, since Dr. McBrine opened first.
Thank you. It's been an honor to serve you as your state senator. In my opinion, Massachusetts is the best state in the nation, and I think that the South Shore is the most beautiful part and best part of it. We've been able to do this by working together as a team and putting party politics aside and focusing on our shared priorities. Those shared priorities, in my opinion, are public education. And if Massachusetts was a standalone country, we'd have the 6th best public education system in the entire country, in the entire world, excuse me. It's higher ed, where our public and private higher ed is the envy of the entire world. It's our healthcare system, which we have definitely the accessibility and the quality component down, but affordability, I agree with Dr. McBrine, needs to be worked at and looked at. And that's why we're trying to do as much as we possibly can with cost containment bills every single year. When you look at how we treat our seniors, how we treat our veterans, how we treat those with intellectual and developmental disabilities, Massachusetts has continuously put party politics aside and to do what's best for the people. Because government at its core is about making people's lives better and having people be able to live their best lives. I ask for your vote on November 6th to continue to work on those shared priorities in a bipartisan fashion with all of my colleagues and all of you to continue to move Massachusetts forward and to continue to move this development forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Dr. McBrine.
So, this one I do have cards for. I would like you to vote for me because I will bring a new set of skills and a more progressive set of ideas to the State House. As a physician, I care about you and your family. I will listen to your concerns and use the scientific evidence to solve our problems. I will work for a more universal healthcare system. I will attack our opioid epidemic from all angles to help our families and communities. I will work towards high-quality, affordable education for all, from pre-K through college or trade school, and accessible, reliable, and affordable public transportation. I will continue to support our working families, promote gun safety, and defend the civil rights of all Massachusetts residents. I will use scientific evidence to protect our environment. And I need you to vote for me, Katie McBrine, and together we can write a prescription for change. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with any questions from the audience. Ma'am.
The question I have is, like, given that you're here at Union Point, and I know Senator O'Connor, passion here, I would like to learn from the other candidate, how central is Union Point for the redevelopment of South Shore in general? Because, you know, there's been like so many changes of master developments and things like that, and I came in late to the discussion, but I would like to hear her point of view in terms of how central Union Point is, because I know Senator O'Connor's opinion. But if this, and then the rebuttal question to Senator O'Connor, what if this development is a failure?
So if I get it, the question is how is this development the core of the South Shore for Dr. McBrine, and then what are the failures for Senator O'Connor? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, this is a huge part, right? And this is a huge part of the district, and it houses a lot of people. So, and I care about people. So, is it important to me? Yes, very much so. It's important to me. And so, you know, there's a lot of issues that are really important. You know, the stopping at compressor station. There's groundwater in Situate. But I think we can handle all of those, right? We don't have to say that I'm going to ignore someone's issue because I got energy for it. I'm ready. I'm ready to do this. So. And it takes time and energy to talk to the people that need to, and I want you guys to know that I hear you, and this is really big thing, especially in this area, and I think for South Shore in general too, right? I mean, the more commercial development, the more businesses that we can have, the more families that we can bring in, it's all great. That's what we want. That's what I would strive for as a state senator, is that you have the best that you can have with the families that you can have. So, I hope that answers the question, is that it matters a lot.
Thank you, Senator O'Connor.
Yeah, as far as the failures go, I think that when you look at it from a wide view, 2008 housing crisis, I think, was the first big thing that failed here. After that, L&R sold the property to Starwood. Starwood bought all of L&R's entire portfolio nationwide. They didn't necessarily want this property, but couldn't then also unload it without making some changes to it because of the governmental structure there. So I'd say the second mistake was the then Tri-Town Development Corporation and the scathing audit that came out from the state auditor. So then after Starwood sold that to L-Star, then you have the trouble with mismanagement that we have now. So I think that when you look back at what the biggest failure is of this project, it's just continuous starts and stops, and starts and stops and starts and stops. And what we need to do, and what I think the mayor is correctly doing, is putting pressure on L-Star to make sure that we don't continue to have these starts and stops, that we continue to have forward movements. And I think that, I truly believe we're going to have that.
Thank you. Next is the gentleman over here, sir.
Senator O'Connor, why do you
Why are you a Republican?
question, Senator.
Sure. I believe in, so when I first signed up to vote, I was really inspired by Senator McCain. And Senator McCain was somebody who I looked up to greatly, started getting into a lot of the readings, Faith of My Fathers and other books that he had written. And I thought that one of the best points that he made was that when he became, after he got back from Vietnam and he became the liaison for the United States Navy to Congress, he loved Congress because Congress worked together. They talked things over, they got at a table like this with a bunch of experts, worked out legislation, and worked on behalf of the American people. And then by the time he joined Congress and everything got to where it is today, he wrote about that later. So I believe that I'm a Republican because I want to bring that back. I want to bring discourse back between Republicans and Democrats. I want to bring faith back in government, and I want to bring solutions to people's problems. And that's what I think that I can do. And being a Republican in Massachusetts is actually, in my opinion, an advantage because I get to play on a lot of these committees that a lot of these Democrats aren't going to be put on because there's so few of us in Massachusetts that they have to put us. For example, a conference committee, any disagreement between a House bill and a Senate bill, 3 members of the House and 3 members of the Senate are put on that bill. 1 member of the House has to be a Republican and 1 member of the Senate has to be a Republican. I know people who have been in office for 15 years and have never been on one. This past year we were on 5.
Thank you. Question? Well, yeah, we can do the same question for Katie, I'm sorry.
Opposite question.
Yeah, opposite.
Why am I a Democrat?
Why are you a Democrat?
Yeah, no, I'm a Democrat because I believe in the platform. I really, I urge you guys to have a look at it. It's all my beliefs. It wants to fight for a more universal healthcare system, which is what I strongly believe in. It believes in protecting the civil rights of all Massachusetts residents, which is something I firmly believe in. It has ranked choice voting in there, which, check it out, it's great. It's a new way to vote. It's long, it's like 17 pages or something like that, so it's not a quick read, but all of those points is things that I believe in. If the party decided to not believe in those things, then I would switch, because I believe that you vote on, it's your core beliefs, but as long as I've been alive, that has been the beliefs. I know that the party changes their ideas, and the Democratic Party is not necessarily what it was 30 years ago, but that's where it is right now, and that's what I believe in, and that's who I am.
He had his hand up. We'll get to you afterwards.
Okay.
Mr. Malone.
Dr. McBrine. It seems to me that the state senator is a full-time position. So what's going to happen to your pediatrics practice?
Yeah, no, it's a question that I get asked most. So I'm still working full-time and doing this full-time and having 2 kids. So I don't recommend doing that. This is a lot. But so I'm going to put it on hold. Basically, it was a hard decision. I talked with all of my families about it, and but they understand. They understand what a mess healthcare is, and that we don't have any voices in our state house. I'm not fooling with you that there is no physicians in our state house, and healthcare is one of our biggest issues. And we need more diversity in our state house. We need more people's opinions. We got lawyers. We got enough of those, right? We need teachers, we need union workers, we need scientists, we need more voices so that they can lead on these issues that matter to people. So I'm gonna put it on hold. I got partners, they're gonna take care of my families, they're not leaving them in the lurch, but.
Steve, I can't really flip that question to Senator
I have one for him.
If you have one for him, that's fair, Steve.
It always seems to be when we go through episodes out here, we should always take heed of what our lessons learned have been. And I'm sure that you've learned a lot, as I have. So looking forward, it seems to me that there might be considered some more changes in legislation or some more changes in the memorandums of agreements where we can take more active control, I guess, with our master developers, which there's not many master development projects in the state, let alone this one. So just any comments in that regard?
Yeah, I think what opens that up is the water agreement. I think if the state becomes a big player in the water agreement, which in my opinion financially we have to, then that opens us up to be able to get more control for our residents here as well as for our communities, and hopefully at some point in time limit the enormous role of the master developer, which is exactly what we have to do. And that gives us stability and gives us flexibility moving forward. And I think that is the course of action that I have been taking by securing the $3 million in economic development bond bill, as well as in my conversations with the SRA and my conversations with L-Star, is that the state has to play a bigger role here, and that the state has to see that power that they gain from that role to the communities and residents.
I will let Dr. McBrine, if you'd like this, I don't want to speak on that topic at all.
Oh, no, I mean, it's okay. I mean,
Okay.
it's fine.
All right. She just had her hand up, she had a question, just let her, and then we'll,
I think, we should have one question per person, I think that would be fair.
Okay.
I was gonna say that, but I have a question for both candidates about your philosophy. I'll start with Dr. McBrine. Do you feel that we need to have a larger federal government or a smaller federal government? And should the state have more power in choosing what's right for the people of the state?
I think our founding fathers did a really great job in coming up with kind of how our system is structured, right? And so I like that the state has power, and I feel like what's going on nationally is really tough. And so it's nice to be in a state like Massachusetts, what kind of buffers you a little bit. I don't know if I would want to change how our government had gotten set up in the beginning, because I do think that it functions very well in the give and take of what the federal government does and what the state powers are set up for. I'd probably get rid of the Electoral College, but other than that, I think what has been set up is pretty great.
do you want to say a question to?
Well, I mean, I
Senator
guess
O'Connell?
my question was more about how much do we want the federal government to grow as compared to the state government? That was more of my question, but federal government has gotten very big. Everybody knows that. That's not what the founding fathers wanted. So I just wanted to see what your philosophy was on that compared to how much the whole state should have of the citizens of the state. And if you want to go back to it, or you wanted to.
Do you want to think about it, Senator O'Connell?
Sure, I think the federal government's too big. I think that it's not only just too big, but it's too loud. It's too noisy, especially now. It's too divisive, and we have a lot of issues that the federal government, we have as states ceded them responsibility to, and they have done a poor job in the past, I would say 12 years, 15 years, of providing solutions to those problems, whether it be college affordability, whether it be health care, whether it be our benefits programs. They continuously drop the ball and start, rather than fixing these issues, they go on CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC and talk about how it's the other person's fault. It's about time that the federal government starts realizing they work for the people and they need to get a job done, and they have not been able to do that. Whereas on the flip side, Massachusetts has continuously gotten things done. And a lot of times when we get things done, it becomes a domino, and that domino goes all the way to Washington, whether it be healthcare, whether it be equality. All of these things started here in Massachusetts and made their way down to DC and then became federal law because it started here in Massachusetts. Public education, public transportation. You look at all of these things Massachusetts has been able to do on our own. I don't think we need the federal government breathing down our neck and hindering the progress that we're making.
Dr. McBrine, you want to rebut that at all, just on that question, just wish you clarified it?
Oh, I don't know. Is the federal government not working right now? Yes, I don't think the federal government is working right now. I also think, though, that our state government is not passing laws that we would like them to pass either. So I don't think it's necessarily, I think it's a problem with our government in general. So I would like to see that we change things. I would like to see that we get more people, again, more diversity in our government, more people that want to listen and do that. So I don't necessarily know if I would want to change the structure of anything, but I do think that our government has to change by electing new people in that will listen.
Thank you.
So, in the district that you do and would represent, there's sort of a wide variety of school districts, from some of the very top in the state to some that continue to have struggles year after year. What are a couple of concrete things that you would do in order to help improve the education quality across the board for children on the South Shore?
Senator O'Connell. Yes.
Thank you. So I voted in favor of putting in the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission. And since 1993, and think about this, since 1993, we haven't accounted for in Chapter 70 funding formula, the major source of funding from the state to school districts for things like special education, cost increases, healthcare cost increases to educate English learners, and also costs for economically disadvantaged children in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. 2 communities, I believe, would depending on what funding formula is used, Weymouth and Hull would be considered some economically disadvantaged children and would get some increases. So being able to fully fund that at 100%, which I voted for, would definitely increase funding for our South Shore schools. But additionally, here in Weymouth, when I was on the council, I proposed a Proposition 2.5 override because we needed that further investment into the town of Weymouth. And I would have provided $3 million more. It didn't pass, but it's not. But I think that goes to show that I'm willing to do whatever it takes in order to make sure our school districts are strong and the children have every opportunity to get a quality education in Massachusetts, especially here on the South Shore.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm very passionate about education, and I think we need to reform that formula funding. So it's 25 years old, and in the formula funding, is healthcare, right? So the healthcare just permeates everything, and the cost of healthcare keeps rising, and because it keeps rising at a rate that they're not funding, it keeps drawing resources from actually educating kids to fund healthcare for their teachers, right? So we have to fix how that funding works. We also have to fix healthcare because that'll help fix with the funding. But we also need to get more funding, right? And there's again, the fair share amendment that I was talking about earlier, that is one way to get some more funding to put into education and transportation. And then candidate for Governor Jake Gonzalez talked about having a tax on endowments. So we have some multi-billion-dollar endowments, and so putting a tax on that'll help fund education to put in, because we ultimately need to invest in our kids. Our kids are our future, and we need to invest in them.
Thank you. So at this time, we've reached our time limit. We're at 8 o'clock. A lot of people are eager to go watch a baseball game. So I'd like to have you give an applause to the 2 candidates.